It happened 10 years ago, the deadliest shipwreck in the Mediterranean since the turn of the century. 368 migrants losing their lives off the coast of the small Italian island of Lampedusa. Since the 1990s, Lampedusa and the whole of the rest of Sicily further north have been the preferred entry points for people attempting the crossing from the African mainland, and it remains the case. On the 3rd of October 2013, though, a trawler which was in a very poor condition and extremely overcrowded with 500 people on board overturned. The fishermen and Coast Guard only managed to save 155 of the passengers, mostly Eritreans and Ethiopians.
We were the first to save anyone. We were near the port, spending the night on our boat. We heard screams and we rushed to see what was going on.
They were more like whispered cries, not screams. It seemed far off and we weren't sure what to do.
They seemed so far away, but on the off chance we set out and found a terrible situation. 150 to 200 people in the water.
At the time, the tragedy was the first on such a huge scale. The whole of Europe left in shock as European leaders pledged that such an event would never happen again. Since then, of course, as you know, arrivals on Lampedusa continue. And there have been many other shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, some even more deadly. But 10 years on, what has become of the survivors of the first major incident? Has anything changed on the island? And is Europe really doing anything to prevent repeats? Natalia Mendoza, Danilo Arnone and Marie Penetrat revisit Lampedusa for France 24.
Rescued at sea by Italian coast guards, these survivors are carrying the only belongings they have.
Okay.
Wearing winter coats despite the hot summer temperatures. For them, the port of Lampedusa is the end of a very long journey. But many others were not lucky enough to reach the Italian coast.
Look over there. These boats were built with the sole purpose of transporting migrants. These wrecks, we see them here all the time. Those ones over there will be removed in a week or two, but it will only take a few days for it to fill up again.
Vito has been living in Lampedusa for over 20 years. He's a shop owner and was an amateur fisherman. He sailed around this Sicilian island for years, until the evening of the 2nd of October 2013.
It was a quiet night on the sea with my friends, when out of the blue one of them says to me, "Can you hear vusciare?" Vusciare in Sicilian means a cry of pain. I replied that it was just the seagulls, when suddenly right in front of me I saw a terrifying scene. At least 200 people in the sea. It looked like an amphitheater of humans, all calling for help. They were screaming with their arms in the air, and we could also see floating corpses.
Vito's boat was the first on the scene of the disaster. He immediately alerted the Italian coast guards and managed to get 47 of the shipwrecked victims to safety on board his boat.
Over there, all around the Helm station, and over here too, there were people who had almost drowned everywhere, all aware that they had just been saved from certain death. When they realized they were alive and safe, they screamed and cried and would hug us. It was such an intense moment, and very difficult too.
That night, 368 people drowned. To pay tribute to them, Vito oversaw the construction of this memorial in the centre of Lampedusa. The name of each victim of this tragedy is inscribed on the monument.
It's a spiral that starts at the top, curling downwards and pulled down by the sea that consumed all those people that night. Finding the names of all the victims was a very complex job. We had to search for all the families who had lost a parent, a son, a husband.
Not everyone on the island agrees with this approach. Some of the 6,000 Lampedusa inhabitants are unhappy and concerned by the continuous influx of migrants.
They should be sent back to where they came from. Send them back home. What are these people doing here? And what are we supposed to do with these people, us Italians?
All the millions we spend on these people, we'd be better off spending it on making our island better.
A few days ago, the memorial's accompanying plaque was vandalised, totally covered in brown tape.
They did it to wipe it out, to obliterate the message. Here I say that I wanted to create this memorial to give them some dignity and to value the people who died that night.
Vito has a mission. For some years now, he has dedicated himself to challenging intolerance and preconceived ideas. That's why he decided to share his experience beyond the island. We head to the Piedmont region in the north of Italy, about 50 kilometers from the border with France. The staff of this secondary school in the town of Mondovi are expecting Vito.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Mondovi. Everybody's waiting for you in the room upstairs.
Okay, thank you.
Around 200 teenagers have come to hear the story of the night he provided assistance to those in danger at sea.
I had difficulty getting them aboard. They were all covered in fuel. They would slip from my hands. At one moment, one of them told me they'd been shipwrecked for more than 3 hours, and that night there was no moon. It was completely dark.
This initiative was started by Tarek Brane. When he was 17, he fled from Eritrea, one of the world's most brutal dictatorships. During his journey to reach Europe, he had to face violence and imprisonment as he crossed Sudan, Libya, and then the Mediterranean.
We don't even talk about what happens in the Sahara Desert. There are so many people who die there. And then in Libya, there's human trafficking, as if people are animals. Libyan soldiers would have a competition to see who could hit us the hardest with their truncheons.
It took Tarek 4 years to reach Italy, where he became an activist. Today, he is president of the 3rd of October Committee. Since the tragedy, he has dedicated his life to honouring the victims and to raising awareness in society to the phenomenon of forced migration. Since 2013, his committee has given talks to nearly 100,000 secondary school students.
We have to break down walls, change the way we see people who migrate. These young people have never seen a refugee. They have no idea what they went through, nor what it means to embark on such a journey for young people like them who want to study but don't have the opportunity.
It was so moving and so different to what we see on TV, on the news. To find yourself in front of someone who has experienced all that. A journey started in hope, but without knowing what might happen to them.
Tarek has stayed in contact with the survivors of the shipwreck. Most of them have left Italy. Nearly 1,200 kilometres further north, in the Netherlands, he visits Alex, one of the 155 people who survived the shipwreck. He's also Eritrean.
Alex.
After the disaster, he rebuilt his life in this village.
The men of Holland. Echt moeilijk. A posto. Allah, tutto bene. Brava. Cinque.
Alex started a new life in the Netherlands. He met his wife and his 3 children were born here.
Sometimes I compare my childhood with that of my children here. It's so different. I remember when I was a child in Eritrea. Growing up there was extremely difficult. There's lifelong military service, and you're treated badly even if you study. Whilst here we live in freedom.
Do the children know about your past?
I haven't told them about it yet. They're still too little.
Do you plan to?
Yes, when they're ready.
When he arrived, Alex learnt Dutch and signed up for several training programs in the hope of getting a job. He's now working in this shop.
I come here every day, and I organize and take care of the merchandise. I'm also a barber. Work gives me dignity and pride. Starting from scratch was not easy. When I got my visa, I had to train to look for a proper job. My job is legal and I pay all my taxes.
In 2020, Alex obtained Dutch nationality. His past in Africa is now a long way behind him. But not everyone had the same chance. Since January, more than 1,800 people have died in the sea around Lampedusa. The island is only 100 kilometers away from the African coast. On the 3rd of October 2013, Pietro Bartolo was the island's doctor. He registered the deaths of the 366 bodies brought ashore.
I opened one of the bags. I remember there was a woman who was still attached to her baby by the umbilical cords. She'd given birth during the shipwreck. That affected me deeply. To remember these things is painful. I'm telling you because I want the world to know what's happened here.
To put a stop to the deaths at sea, Dr. Bartolo took up politics. In 2019, he was elected a member of the European Parliament.
I understood that politics was the way to change things. We have to change the way that we approach the migratory phenomenon on a European level. We consider it okay that these people arrive here by risking their lives, but it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't accept this. They should come to Europe legally through humanitarian corridors.
One morning in Lampedusa, Dr. Bartolo leads a group of visiting MEPs, all of them members of the Civil Liberties Committee, and they're from all sides of the political spectrum. Their differences are clear as soon as they disembark.
We're dealing with organised trafficking. It's an invasion of the European continent. The EU must ask the countries from which they depart, and particularly Tunisia, to stop the boats that leave from their coastline. One can easily intercept these boats before they enter our territorial waters.
Others, quite the opposite, are calling for the creation of a European search and rescue mission in the Mediterranean to stop the shipwrecks at sea.
Should be a European search and rescue framework committed to humanitarian international law, whose first rule is saving lives whatever the cost. We are here to
a resolution was passed by the European Parliament in July for this purpose, but it's difficult to put into action. After their trip out to sea, Dr. Bartolo takes the delegation to the hotspot in Lampedusa, the only reception centre on the island. Candidates for asylum are transferred here when they debark. The centre is frequently over capacity.
Are you at twice your capacity? Our official capacity is for 389 people. Yesterday there were 1,300.
For Pietro Bartolo, the aim of this visit is to convince the MEPs to reform the EU's policy on migration.
Europe cannot become a fortress. We must provide answers, a welcome system, solidarity, shared responsibility. Each country must contribute. There can't be some countries who refuse to participate while others accept refugees.
While waiting for reforms, Deaths at sea in the Mediterranean continue, and the cemeteries reflect these tragedies. Each time, new tombs are dug in the area reserved for unidentified persons, right next door to the mausoleums of the Italian families.
These graves have been marked with crosses made from wood, from the boats. We'll never know who these people were. They are victims, during their lives and after their death, because even dead, they cannot be given a dignified resting place. And in their country of origin, families are waiting for some news, mothers waiting for a call from their children, not knowing what has happened to them, whilst they're buried here, in these conditions.
At the moment, there is no European protocol in place to identify the victims of migrant shipwrecks. Over the last 10 years, more than 26,000 people have died trying to cross the Mediterranean, the most deadly migratory route in the world.
Natalia Mendoza, Danilo Arnone and Marie Panitra revisiting Lampedusa for France 24. That's all from this week's edition. You can catch it again and the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. More news coming up very shortly. Thanks for watching.